We're going to have a break from politics and the news cycle for something very special. Sarah Grynberg is a top-rated podcast host, journalist turned mindset coach, keynote speaker, and author whose book Living a Life of Greatness is out now. And Sarah joins us in the studio. Sarah, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me.
And congratulations on launching your book Living a Life of Greatness. Why did you want to write it?
So I've had my podcast, A Life of Greatness, for 6.5 years now. And as you mentioned, worked as a mindset coach for many years. And through my own experiences, I found that there were these key pillars to leading a great life. And I thought, well, it's time, a lot of the audience from A Life of Greatness said you should write a book. And I thought, you know what, it's time now to put all of my learnings and my teachings into something written. So that was the reason that I put the book together.
So for someone hearing this concept, Life of Greatness, for perhaps the first time, what exactly does that mean and what does a life of greatness look like?
So a life of greatness looks different to all of us. But what I say within the book and my own teachings is that everything that we need is inside of us already. But because of the noise of the world and people saying that we could never do this or you're not good enough to do that, we kind of lose that spark and that fire that we're born with. And we find a lot of the time that we're far away from that innate greatness that we always have. And a life of greatness, I believe, is coming home to what we always had inside of us and rediscovering it. And within the book, I write the key pillars on what I believe is what one needs to live a great life.
And one of the chapters I know is embracing authenticity.
Yes.
How do you know if you are living a life that is really aligned with your authenticity? What are kind of the things you should be looking out for? And then how do you get to that point if you kind of realise that something is not in alignment with you? How do you check in and then make a shift?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think living an authentic life is living a life that you want to lead rather than a life that other people want you to lead. And I think what's kind of common with a lot of people, and especially within the work I do as a mindset coach, is they'll say, for example, they could have been a teacher or something like that. They wanted really to be a teacher. They got these amazing marks in school, and so their parents were like, you should be a lawyer. So then they went off and studied law. They have this life and they're unhappy because they're not living the life that they wanted to live. Or you hear stories about a lot of women not being able to maybe have their voices used as much as they would like to because it's being drowned out by their husband, or they're being subservient to what their husband wants and not living authentically to them. And I think when you really take time out to think about what makes me tick, what makes, purpose and authenticity quite aligned together. Where do I want to go with my life? What do I want to do? And then in those kind of silent moments, you hear the whispers of the things that you believe will bring you joy. And a lot of the time too, you can really go back to those childhood years and think about what you loved to do then and what were the things. It might have been creative, it might have been something to do with arts or sciences that you really loved, and go back and revisit that and start living what is authentic to you.
It's so interesting, and it's such good advice, I think, for anyone to go back to the childhood years. I think back to when I was 12 years old and my dream job was to be a TV presenter.
Really?
So, honestly,
wow.
It's very good.
Well, you knew straight up.
Yeah.
And mine was I loved entertainment, and I always knew from a young age that I wanted to be in entertainment. And so, I got there in a roundabout way, but I always stayed true to myself and my authenticity by being in that kind of field.
So you were in entertainment, you had a hugely successful media career, dream job producing top-rated breakfast radio programs. Was it scary to kind of take a leap away from what you had built to go down this path?
So I was obviously, as you mentioned, I worked as a producer and in breakfast radio for a period of time, and I got completely burnt out with the long hours, 3 a.m. wake-ups. And I had a 2- and a 4-year-old at the time. And through that burnout is when I discovered self-improvement work, personal development. And within that, I really started embodying everything I was learning. And after a while, I realised that job on the outside looked really good. It was paying really well, and it was something I had thought that I wanted. And then I realised I had done no inner work, and when I started to do the inner work, that it wasn't at all what I wanted. And I wanted to do something that would give back more and that I thought would be more meaningful. And I moved into podcasting and then came up with the idea for my podcast. And it's interesting because doing the podcast, A Life of Greatness, fulfilled me so much when I saw how much other people were getting from it. And that kind of ties into this idea of service and why, even if it's just in the smallest acts, when we help others on their journey, we are fulfilled in the most beautiful way, and that lights us up and brings us so much joy. So it wasn't as hard as what you think it would be, because I really felt that I was at a point where I was so burnt out and I was moving into another role that was more for me, that I could be of service.
I absolutely love that, and it's admiring to see what you do, and it's no doubt inspiring others to kind of look within themselves and maybe make changes, big or small. And I have to ask, being a top podcast host, you've interviewed Matthew McConaughey, you've interviewed John Howard, you've interviewed Esther Perel, you've interviewed Andrew Huberman, Deepak Chopra. I mean, what are some of the things that you've learned having been able to spend a fair bit of quality time with these really inspiring people?
Yeah.
What's something that you've taken away from speaking to all of them?
One thing I've really learned is that we are honestly all the same, in the sense that we all want to be heard and we all want to be listened to and seen. And I think that's a really powerful thing, because we put people on pedestals and we think, oh, they're a famous actor or a famous writer or whatever it is. But they really very much have the same inner turmoil that the everyday person does. And that is one thing I realised, that we're all human. And then the other thing that they have said, like other pearls of wisdom, would be, you know, stay in your own lane. And when I've heard that, it's more so in the sense that don't look at what everyone else is doing and get upset that you're not there yet, right? Stay in your lane and do the best work that you can. Look to others for inspiration, but stay in your lane and don't get distracted, because there will always be someone that is doing bigger things or something in your mind that you think is better, and that can be upsetting. But when you really just focus on you and being the best version of yourself, then you'll see that you'll be able to give as much as possible. And I think about that a lot, because I think a lot of us kind of look at others and might compare ourselves, and that comparison can be a really tricky area and can really get us down. But I think if we're really focusing on being the best versions of ourselves and doing the best work that we can, then we will find what we need. And I think that's the most important thing.
Do you find that also kind of translates to your work as a mind coach, or mindset coach? So you're coaching people who are athletes, who are senior executives. Do you find that many people have the same kind of challenges?
Yes, absolutely. It's interesting. As you said, I coach a lot of executives and business owners who, you know, have these top jobs, and you think that they would know everything, which they do. They're very smart. But one thing that gets them is the mind.
Right.
You know, it's the ruminating thoughts, is the thought of failure, the thought that I'm not good enough. All these people have the same things. And through my book, and I talk about conscious awareness, is the idea that we need to be very conscious of the thoughts that we think, the words that we say to ourselves and to others, and our actions. And I teach a lot of them how to do that, because I think that negative narrative in the untrained mind is the thing that can run absolutely wild. And we need to be able to train our minds to be able to live the greatest life. The mind is the most important thing. And if we don't have that in check, then nothing can go wrong, but we could create all of this misery just by the things that we think.
How do you find it now? You've done so much work. You're putting out such amazing work to uplift and inspire others so that they can, harness the best life for themselves. Do you find it now? Because you've launched this book. Do you still get challenges? Do you feel like you have to kind of check in with yourself with some of the work that you've studied and put out?
Absolutely. I always go back to the things that I teach, and I use them in my everyday life every single day.
Yeah.
So, the way that I teach people about conscious awareness and the thoughts that we think and how to get it out of a ruminating spiral. One thing that I'll teach people quickly is, if we have a negative thought, it's already there. What do we do with it? And I say, replace it with a better feeling thought. And the way that you do it is knowing already what your better feeling thought will be. So that could be anything that brings you joy. It might be a family member or a dog or a place that you love to go. But think of that same thing every single time. So when the negative thought comes up, you're not scrambling, right? You know what the better feeling thought is. And we know through neuroplasticity, the more that we do this, the more that we rewire our brain from negative to positive. So you might need to do this 50 to 60 times a day when you first start, but then it becomes second nature. So I'm always doing things like that. If I ever have ruminating thoughts, I'm always using the techniques that I teach people about how to get out of those thoughts. I'm in deep meditation every single day because I know that by going into meditation, it's slowing my brain waves down. And by slowing my brain waves down in my eyes open life, I'm better when I respond to things. And if something negative comes up, I don't jump and get really angry, because when I've done meditation, it's given me the time to, okay, I can respond to this with more clarity rather than anger. Those are all the practices plus more that I use every single day. And that's why I believe it's so important to know these things, because it just allows you to have a really, really great life. And I wasn't like that before. I got into this work because I had a mind that went at 100 miles an hour, and I was constantly overthinking and constantly worrying. And it was making my life hell. Like, nothing was happening on the outside to do that, but I was in so much turmoil on the inside. And so I needed these tools to be able to lead a life that was far more calming and great. And it honestly is life-changing. And that's why I was like, I've got to teach everything that I know to other people as well.
For someone who might find themselves in a similar situation to what you were in, I think one of the questions they might want to ask is, how long does it take? Everyone, I suppose, wants a quick fix. But what would your advice be, I think, to someone that is in that position? They're seeing you now, such a bright light. What's their journey ahead? What does it look like?
So if we do these practices every day, like watching our thoughts, watching the words that we say, watching our actions, get into meditation. It can be 10 to 15 minutes, most days, at least 5 days a week. If we're doing these sort of things, working out what our purpose is, treating people with kindness, that's a chapter in my book. No joke, it doesn't take long. For me, I think it took maybe 3-4 months to really start seeing changes. The thing is, as you said, people love a quick fix. And in personal development, we say you've got to do the work.
Yeah.
Right? And the work is continuous. Like, you asked me, do I do this stuff? Still, of course I do.
Yeah.
Because if I didn't, my mind would still race. We are wired to be more negative than we are positive. And so when you see what I say is like the breadcrumbs from the universe, when you see these great things start changing in your life because you're taking all these things into account that I mentioned, it makes you want to keep doing it. When you know how to control your mind and you're living in harmony and peace, of course you want to be able to do it more. And doing this work means it's an everyday thing, but you live with so much more clarity. And that not only touches you and makes you happy, it touches the lives of everyone around you. And honestly, who doesn't want that?
Of course. Sarah, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us here on Power Hour, and congratulations on launching your book, Living a Life of Greatness. It is out now. And how can people follow you and stay up to date with the work that you're doing?
I'm on Instagram at Sarah Grynberg. I have a YouTube channel that's also Sarah Grynberg. My podcast is A Life of Greatness. And my book, Living a Life of Greatness, is at any good bookstore, and online you can purchase it, and also the audiobook.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.